On tonight's work session is a presentation of the budget concepts for the first round of pedestrian safety projects in downtown Fairhope. Ms. Botop.
So we did what Richard and I were referring to as our speed presenting the last work session on this. So we really didn't need to get too in the weeds on this project because you all already saw it at the last council meeting. I will say, as a follow-up, I know there have been some articles written about it, and we've had some questions at the city about people's concerns about cobbles and, you know, is it going to be hard to walk on and that sort of thing. And we've corrected some of that and put out some more information about what we're talking about exactly. Just to clarify, we're not talking about putting cobbles in areas where people are walking, and we're not even really sure that the cobble strip is going to be approved in the final budget. So it's proposed, and it was part of the study that was recommended. But the one thing we did want to talk about is we wanted to jump on putting the public parking signs up right away. I know it's been something we've been talking about. We don't want it to be held up anymore by the citywide wayfinding implementation. So we have two examples up that just wanted to show you. We've gone through a ton of different examples. Something really simple, either this one, and I think Jeff has control. Jeff, can you move it to the next one? So look up at the screen, or in this one. So these were our two winners. The first one is a banner, a pole banner, so it's easy to print. It's something we can use now until, you know, if the wayfinding comes out with something different, we can change it then. But at least we can get something out there. This one, as you can see, is more of a, you know, wayfinding type sign, but it's strictly for parking purposes, and it would have an arrow. We want a directional arrow. The other thing is we've been contacted by the Eastern Shore Arts Center about doing some creative placemaking, public art, to guide people to parking. They're really excited about doing something. They've talked with the state Main Street director who wants to talk to the city about it. So I'm not sure what that looks like. They want to do it on the ground. I didn't want to go into too much detail because our kickoff meeting is tomorrow and we haven't talked to the property owner, but we are thinking about maybe a directional mural or some kind of fun mural to guide people on the side of one of the buildings there to catch people's attention to the parking garage. But that's private property, so it's not a decision we would make. I just wanted to let you know that that was happening. That was something we've been contacted about.
And we will, one of the things, and y'all let us kind of nudge in last 2 weeks ago, and we've kind of got that scope narrowed down. One of the things that they are, the deliverables, is an estimate of probable construction costs. So when we have that put together, we'll definitely bring that back to you. Another thing is maybe for a part of this concept of trying to tighten up the directional information about where the public parking is I think one of y'all may have mentioned it as a concept, doing thermoplast markings actually on the driving pavement that says public parking with an arrow directing you into it in both directions.
We've asked y'all to do that for a year.
Yeah.
So, and that's inexpensive, and it's one of those things that's easy to do. So
what's it got to take to get it done?
We got to get a stencil made, and that's it. So I'll get to work on it right away. How about that?
I mean, do y'all need a resolution or anything
No,
like that?
that's we have paint markings in our normal maintenance budget. So
awesome.
All right.
And that will be, I mean, we want to direct people to all public parking, not just the garage. I mean, we have other public parking around the city that people don't easily find. And unfortunately, it's just taken us longer than we had hoped for the wayfinding citywide to get that done. So we don't want this part to wait any longer. And we've heard that from quite a number of people here. And yeah.
Anything else on that?
I think that's it. We're moving forward. We'll have the budget, like Richard said, in front of y'all soon. We met with the engineers and we're working on it.
Can I ask another question while I've got you here? We're kind of on that subject, Richard. The stoplight at Volanta, I've been harping on it for years, and I think we had bought a loop detector, and it is, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's 5 a.m., there's 6 cars on Section Street going either way, and there's nobody on Volanta, and it just seems to congest things in the city, and and the traffic just needs to flow through there. It needs to be some kind of wait there for the people that are coming in from Volanta. I mean, I counted the other day 17 cars going north, backed up at the light. Nobody on Nobody on Valenta, 17.
So the suspicion is that it's just on a fixed dumb cycle?
Yeah, it's just a timer.
So
and
there's
I
no
believe
loops or
we
controller?
bought 2 loop detectors, one for there and one for Gayfer, quite some time ago, and then they haven't been, I mean, it's like 3 years ago.
And this is on Section.
This section of
I hear
Valanta.
about this a lot from
And apparently, if you want
commuters.
to know when the red's on Valanta, follow Jack.
Be on the phone with me, then you'll know.
Well,
There we go.
I will
Right.
get with Mr. Allison and the
Apparently
rec
hits it
department and
every
see what-
time.
I have that
We're on
conversation
that.
with my husband.
Every time.
Oh, yeah.
There is no such thing as a green light there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
hear
think it stays green on a Valenta and it turns when you pull up there on section, I don't know. Maybe they put the loop detector on the wrong road.
I'll find out about
I know y'all
that.
didn't do it.
Is there anything else we wanted to? We're kicking off the alleyway project meeting, the parking garage tomorrow morning, like I said, which is really exciting.
Well, Shirley, how do we stand on the funding from the MPO on that? Are they waiting on us? Are we waiting on them for
No,
funding?
we got released. We got then there were several things that had to be done that just took time. One was there was a lease respect that had to be through single tax and the parking authority. That got done. They approved our professional service agreement, and that all got signed, and that is done. So we were able to tell the professional services to get going. So we're going now. The money is released, and as soon as we get an invoice in, and then as soon as that check clears when we pay it, then we can submit for our reimbursement on it. So,
80%.
yes.
It's just really going to be a great project. So
It is.
What's going on with the Bratz Hub there? Is that?
That's all part of this.
Part of it.
And we're officially moving, meaning that we are spending money on this project
Yeah.
now.
So we can tell citizens it'll be completed when?
Well, we'll have our first run on the design concept on March 24th. So we'll release that. It'll be very preliminary. Tomorrow is just a stakeholder meeting with property owners and, Jimmy, I know your bank backs up, the chamber.
More importantly than us, is Charlie Bassett involved in the conversation?
Yes, absolutely. Parking Authority is very involved. A member of the Parking Authority and the Downtown Fairhope Business Association board chair is on the committee. So we've tried to get everyone that represents a major stakeholder involved.
Jimmy, do you have any kind of feel for the merchants along there? How resistant are they going to be to clean up? They still have garbage cans and whatnot, and so there's a, you got to
I haven't
pretty
heard
that
any-
up. And
Yeah, I mean, I would think that if you cleaned it up, there might be more initiative to keep it looking nice. I haven't had anybody mention one way or the other that they were, opposed to. They would like to see the alley cleaned up, but I haven't heard anyone say
to
that.
me, if you're making it more attractive and you're attracting people to that parking deck, they're just adjacent to those people's businesses. And very, I don't know if that would help, but
Peer pressure.
And that is, the scope of work does allow this dollar to affect the whole area. So, one of the things that we've talked about, and it's going to be acceptance of business, is designing garbage corrals so that they are something that hide the unattractive part of it, but is serviceable. We've even talked about.
Do you look at that? Is that part of your wheelhouse as well to make? I was just thinking that to make it serviceable. I mean,
Yes.
Public Works is involved.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
that you
And
know how to. You can't
exactly.
make it so pretty that the truck can't get the garbage.
That's
Or
right.
make it so difficult for the garbage operator to get it in and out of the containment area. It's got to be functional and usable.
We spent more time looking at
And I
garbage
keep forgetting
corrals.
which building. One of the buildings has the biggest transformer. It's just squared up right in the center of it. We've talked about how can we make that transformer, it may be
Is it
y'all.
yours?
And it's just, I know to Mike and Richard Peterson, a transformer is a thing of beauty, but right there on the edge of the alley, it's just not attractive. I'm just telling you. And so those are the challenges we're looking at. How can we soften that, but still make it where they can service it and everything else? So, this is, the big goal is aesthetics and functionality, and meeting that. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, put art on it, Lisa said. It's a fine line. I mean, we want a lot of art, but at the same time, it can get, kind of schizophrenic with a ton of art out there.
And down at North Beach, if you didn't notice, we painted that one a color that was a lot more complementary, and it's made that great big transformer almost disappear into the scenery. So sometimes just a color change can make a big difference. So,
Jeff, can you go back to that other slide? Did y'all have any
was gonna see, I
feelings
can do
about
this.
this? Nope, not that one. The parking 1 and 2. So you see that's the banner, whole banner, with just an arrow. I mean, it's simple, but it does the job.
Yeah.
We looked at a
Like
lot
you said,
of them.
inexpensive.
Mhm.
See if it works, and something else comes about with the wayfinding, then so be it.
Update it then.
Obviously, I think we'd all want to minimize the number of poles. I know that some are necessary, but
Yeah.
keep it to a minimum. Banner accomplishes that.
I think there are a couple poles near the entries, so we've looked at that. We can just use those. We
Speaking
won't
of
put
signage
extras.
in North Beach, we might need to get no driving on beach signs. I drove through there yesterday, and some guy from out of town had attempted to drive out on the beach.
And that happened about 10 days ago, too. Somebody went out and got stuck on the beach, so, okay.
Is that
I
allowed?
would think that would be obvious, but, okay.
I'm kidding. If I had known. No.
We'll look into that.
I mean, it's
kidding.
always something really neat.
You can't sign everything.
No, I was about to say.
Right.
So you'll bring some budget numbers to us maybe at the next meeting
Yes.
then, or a couple of meetings from now?
Yeah, he should be to the point where he should be able to start at least giving us some probable cost estimates there, so for each of those projects that we introduced to you. So I will make that a goal to get that as soon as possible to you.
Thank you.
Shirley Lee, got you on the
Yes,
next
sir.
item.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, the
Thank you.
cattail,
Thanks,
yes, and there's a
Okay.
picture of that as well.
Yeah, so next item on tonight's work session would be the consideration of some gifts that have been offered to the city of Fairhope. We just have to receive these. There's a cattail pond sculpture from Constance Lewis.
Jeff, can you pull up the cattail? I sent him the slide. There we go. It says 30 inches, but it's actually 30 feet
Is that a rocket in the
by
back?
15. It looks like a nuclear.
Got a special solid rocket booster?
I don't know where this artist works, but so yes, this is the sculpture. It was actually purchased by someone in Atlanta from an artist, the artist that did the sculpture in front of the library. She also did the sculpture by behind the Daphne Civic Center. Everyone thinks it's a dreidel, but it's not. I'm not sure. I think it's some sort of top, but it's not a dreidel. Anyway, this artist is very, very well known, and the person that purchased it wanted to donate it to the city of Fairhope. So it's coming actually not from the artist, but from a donor, an individual. And it is quite large. We've already engaged COPA. They've been looking at this and recommending places it could go. I had a conversation.
Is a roundabout, Eric, one of the roundabouts?
So one of the roundabouts, actually, our Public Works Director brought that up
It's
today.
a good traffic calming device, too.
Yeah, at the roundabout that already exists.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I've sent that recommendation to COPA, and I'm waiting. One of the COPA members said, absolutely, one of the concerns was if we put it somewhere on the waterfront, we had discussed maybe Fairhope docks and making it a water feature even, that someone could fall in it, or it could cause more, it could be dangerous, I guess. That was something brought up too, like we already have one. But these are, concerns were brought up about different things. I like the idea of the roundabout, but
Yeah.
Not
that's,
that it matters. Is there a hole in the middle of it, or is it supposed to hold water?
there's not a hole in the middle of it.
Is it supposed to hold water? Obviously, it will.
It could.
And I don't know.
Right.
mosquito
That's gonna
trap.
rust
It could be a
out,
mosquito.
or should
So
there
we
be a
might
hole?
have to, we'll have
Should there be a hole
to,
implemented in the
I'll
middle of
defer
it?
to Public Works to help.
Painted steel, so.
Mm-hmm.
probably won't
Well,
rust.
it's stainless steel cattails. The base is painted steel.
Right, but that's
But
what I'm
it's gonna
saying.
rust.
It's probably,
Not in your lifetime.
Just saying.
It'll
Looks like a
rust,
good
but not-
fire pit with that ring around.
A fire pit.
That's what it looked like.
Maybe the
It's
person
like-
that drove on the beach can test that
It's just,
out.
again, it's just a question. I just,
Yeah, I mean, those are all things
not that
to
it certainly wouldn't
consider.
stop us or not from taking it, because it's a beautiful piece of work.
Does anybody
It
have
is
any
neat.
problem with us accepting that? If not, I'll
No.
ask Tracy to put that on the next agenda.
Yeah, the problem.
Anybody have a problem with
We can't have that.
that? Okay.
That would be great.
All right, and then the next item it's been requested to be accepted by the city are 3 parcels of land.
That's right.
And I should have a plat of these. Councilman Brown, you went and walked the property?
I did a drive-by inspection.
I spoke with the,
Then it go.
it's in a riverine, yeah, and I spoke with the trustee who is managing the estate. I think she's a family member, but they're looking for, they're looking for some sort of tax deduction as part of it. Now, the value has declined because it's unbuildable now. So they're investigating with their tax people whether or not, what the value would be. From our end, if the city accepts it, I'm not sure, I don't think we can provide tax documentation for taking in donated property. I don't know that we have a vehicle set up like that. And there's only one land trust that exists in our area, and that's Weeks Bay Foundation. So this doesn't have to be done until the end of the year, I found out, for their tax purposes. So we have some time, and I'm just doing some investigating on the types of acceptances we can do as a city. And I don't know historically if y'all have ever accepted land like this before as a donation or conservation
Yeah, I think we have.
and
but-
provided tax benefits.
Yeah, the most recent that I can think of was, when we purchased the Triangle property, we purchased it at $4 million below appraised value. I think that they used that for a tax deduction.
They did.
So it was not a giveaway, but it was still a purchase well below appraised value. I mean, I think that the main thing that we are concerned about is if we take ownership of that, what kind of liabilities come along with
Exactly.
that land? Are they, getting rid of it to avoid some kind of liable situation, and then we take it on, and the next thing you know, we're having to buy 6 lots to the adjacent to it.
Well, the parents passed away that owned it, and so they left it to their, I guess, their daughter. And, I mean, they're unbuildable. She wanted to donate them. I mean, just to protect the riverine. She seemed very
I wonder
interested
if
in the environmental
It wouldn't be
component.
better to partner with somebody like Weeks Bay, where
That's
they
what
can
I
put
was
it in a
thinking.
conservation easement, and they can get all their documents from Weeks
Yeah.
Bay.
And so I've spoken with EIL, their executive director, about this in the past, and I've touched base with her again. I just need to connect with her and do some more research.
Well, we do have a park in that area that's not too far from there, almost directly to the west.
Another deal is you
So
could,
it could be a park.
you could put a
Just
retention
native natural
pond.
area, yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's right there in the gully. I mean, I'm sure the neighbors don't want to park right there in the
To
gully.
help the, I don't know how much it would help. I mean, that would be an engineer's design.
Yeah, there ain't much to it.
Okay.
And Richard, have
Maybe
you
more
walked
effort
that
than what it
site?
would be
Yeah.
worth.
I'm not familiar with it.
We'll go out there too. So we do have a little
And
time.
with that,
but-
also, something else to consider as well, and this is, it's a thought, is, they give it to us, we don't know what to do with it, we're just taking it off their hands so they get a tax write-off and eliminate the tax burden. It's loss of property tax revenue. If it's not worth much, it may not be much, but
Mm.
Thinking if it's not buildable,
Yeah,
the assessed
Yeah.
value is not going to be.
It's not.
Will
No.
reflect that.
Mhm. That's right.
The one thing about it is.
And they did have the county assess it already.
It's
They-
only detrimental during the heavy floods, and it's only during that time. In other words, the water floods through within a 24-hour period. Now, it'd be wet, but it's not like it's holding water.
Mhm.
And short of any type of liability that we would have, which I don't think we would, I mean, you get 2 or 3 a year maybe, but it could be utilized for some type of park or something during the dry times.
And Marcus and I have spoken a little bit about
Maybe a
it.
regional detention pond.
Well, that's what I was-
Richard?
I know, that's why I said
And
I
I
wanted to
was
bring
thinking,
it
I
up
don't think
there.
there's anything, I don't think there's anything in between there and the bay that has a drainage issue. I think it's all in the gully at that point.
Mm.
Okay.
That is the drainage.
the only reason I'm sensitive to it is because there are lots that have cost us money
Upstream.
very close to that
Yeah.
area. As you well know, you've lived along
Yeah.
that area, a couple of houses, so it's just not too far. That's why it kind of jumps out at me as a concern. Okay. All right, so we're not in any hurry on that?
We're not in a hurry, we'll continue. I'll bring you more information,
Okay,
so.
all right, very good.
Is that all on mine?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 3 is a discussion of bike and pedestrian trails. Robert, you want to start that discussion? You have an agenda item on tonight's,
Yeah, what number is that? 19? Yeah, number 27. I presented it last meeting. Like I'd mentioned, I'd met with a group of biking enthusiasts that wanted to put bike trails, and this wasn't the first time I'd come up, it's just the first time they met with the new council. Like I said, it was a couple years ago. Just trying to utilize that northern parcel of the Triangle property. The city owns it. We're not being asked to go out and purchase any land for bike trails. We currently have it. It's low impact. A couple of the people on the well, they're not in a committee, but they were just a group of biking enthusiasts, like I said, that they travel around the southeast and even the country, for biking trails. And so I thought it was a good low-impact use, and it could be done relatively inexpensive to put that property to use for a certain part of the citizens of Fairhope that don't have the recreational bike trails. So that's why I presented it.
So I kind of want to piggyback on the Roberts discussion, and that is that, just a couple of things. It's not a lot of money for that design to be created. We don't have to build it if we don't like it. The other thing, though, the main thing I want to mention is that while we're doing this, and I know that we talked about having an overall plan for that land, although I think a bike trail would lend itself to being pretty flexible if it didn't fit into the overall plan. It's probably not something that's permanent. We're not laying down asphalt or any type of concrete. It's just a trail through the woods. But what I would like to address is the fact that if we're going to push a bike trail because a group of people came in and said, all right, well, let's do something with it. I think we should push some pedestrian trails as well, because I think if you had 300 mountain bikers in the city, you'd probably be overestimating the number that you have. But we probably have 5,000 walkers in the city. So I don't know if this group can look at pedestrian trails, or somehow I just think the greater use of that is pedestrian trails over bike trails. I know we could look at those bike trails for multi-use trails, but I almost feel like I want to go a step
What's
further.
that?
Get run over.
Yeah,
Well, I think if you ask the people in Poland what they'd rather see, the bike's I don't think anybody's gonna have a problem with that necessarily, but I think first and foremost, we have a lot more people that want to walk through there than want to ride a bike through there.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but I'd also say the point that people that do travel around just regionally, Orange Beach, Auburn area, to get on these mountain bike recreation trails, they would say there's nothing like this in our city, and we would like to have something. And I would say to the walkers, there's plenty of places you can walk in the city, and you can have both on this 70-acre parcel. You can have walking trails and you can have biking trails. So I'm not saying it's just going to be solely biking trails and everybody else stay out. I'm just saying let's provide this for these biking enthusiasts for this small amount of money and put the parcel to use.
Well, we had two citizens come to us at the last meeting and push for a bike trail. Now, I'm a city council member, and I'm pushing for a pedestrian trail, so I don't want to say it wasn't brought up. I want to push for a pedestrian trail.
I think it's a great idea.
So what can we do to further that?
Well, Jack, you and I talked last week, Jack, about having a study done for that parcel or getting somebody in there. I think we get some of the local knowledge. There's plenty of foresters, retired, and people that know that property that can walk it and tell you what kind of species of trees are on there that need to be protected. It even says in that Thompson Engineering report that I referred to on my post about what is on there that could be preserved and be a benefit for people biking and walking through that property. So I think you could probably get enough volunteers here locally on how to move forward with
Well,
it.
wouldn't they want to weigh in on the bike trail as well then? I mean, aren't they?
Well, and the reason I'm putting this bike trail is this company, the International Mountain Biking Association, that's their specialty, to maximize the effectiveness of the bike trail, spend this money and have it done right. So
I'm not
yeah.
sure if it'll have to be rebid or whatever by the city, kind of like the dredging. I mean, that's something we want to make sure that we get right. But I do want to just, for the record again, I'm definitely for this project. But when we put together the budget, we are only leaving ourselves a $13,000, it's not a profit, but just a balance. So pretty much anything that we approve right now is going to have to be taken from utilities. And, we are doing an overall, not only comprehensive land use plan, which would tie in all of our assets and land use, but we also are doing a separate study on the prioritizing parks and needs for the community. And I want to do it all, but it does need to fit into a puzzle so we're not being pulled all these directions, and there is a focused, way to unfold the plan. And I agree, this is not very much to do the plan, but we don't know how much it's going to cost to implement it. And the funding sources, which if you tie me in and Sherry Lee and our grant writer, we can actively look for funding as well, and that would pay for things like this. So it's just really communication and trying to tie it into the overall big picture, so we're not putting the cart before the horse.
I would say as far as the budget goes, there are incomes that we're not allowed to budget, that we know we're going to make money on things, such as court costs. You can't put that in the budget. So we've had,
But that has to be spent for their budget.
there's just-
It has to be, it doesn't go to parks.
I don't even know how many untold expenses that we have come up on a moment's notice,
Oh,
an
yeah.
emergency expenditure here or there that we have to spend money for.
I agree that, and we do know
And
that's
not
going to
just-
come.
Not just emergency, just grants that are brought to us that are 80/20 match, and it's still hundreds of thousands of dollars that we match.
But
and we
that's what you
approve.
consider, of course, before we do it. I mean, it's just all, if we're putting in more for community development, those are things I just feel like we need to schedule within a budget. Otherwise, right now, because our city is not self-sufficient, we're taking it from utilities. And that's all I want to say about that.
Council, any comments? You want to reserve them for tonight's budget, for tonight's agenda item discussion? I just was kind of looking for something more concrete as to a pedestrian plan as well, while they're talking. Same thing with the culvert, with the potential tunnel there. If we had somebody come in and if they could work together with this bike trail. I don't want the bike trail to have the blank canvas and then it take the priority of the land and be the focal point when I think it's going to be used by relatively few people compared to what other uses we're going to have for it. They just take the cream of the crop, you know what I'm saying?
Well, this is actually the first start of what, of what we're going to do in order for planning. You can always get in and talk to them about the same thing or add that at a later date for walking pedestrian.
But if they go in there and they've got 70 acres to work with and they draw that trail where they want it, because there's nothing else on that canvas, and
But they'll be aware that something else is going to be on that canvas.
They're going to take the prime land, I guarantee you. That's one concern I have. And
that's what we got into last
Yeah.
meeting was, well, are we better off to come up with the overall plan and then figure out where this fits in the middle of it?
Well, I'd be comfortable if Robert went to these people and said, look, when you draw this bike trail, you can't have every bit of it, say, along the creek where people might want to walk, or, you can touch it, but, needs to be some stipulations.
I just think it would be better to tie it all in at the same time.
But I think Robert's point is that it's been sitting there for so long and nothing's happening, and I think, and I don't disagree, is that if we just keep kicking the ball down the road, when do we
I don't
where a
think-
grant? What grant are we going after?
Well,
When
Well,
would we have
first of all,
a plan?
I think we need to
This is the first time
let
we
it sit there and let
talked
the trees grow a little bit bigger. Let's just leave it alone.
I don't think
That's
you
dumb.
look at it that way. We don't spend money just because it's sitting there. I mean, you just put it in an overall plan with parks.
No, I
And
brought
I
this.
think it's very positive. It just, the city is not making money right now. And that does have to be taken into account when we're trying to save the money for utilities for infrastructure upgrades.
Any other comments on it? I support you on the trail. I just want them to be cognizant that we need
And
walking trails. And
I
I'd like to-
absolutely do
I'd like to
too.
move forward with walking trails as well.
We're spending
This
a
is
couple
not
$100,000 for walking trails down at North Beach. I mean, there's plenty, they can walk down there. I mean, there's people walking now, so I mean,
It's dangerous to walk down there right now at North Beach, and that's why the last DECA funds we looked at were, that's also an existing park that can be enhanced. And it's used a lot more, and we're trying to do biking, not mountain biking, but cycling and pedestrian, making it more pedestrian friendly.
if we were to vote on this tonight, Robert, I remember when I first took office, we were asked to vote on the soccer complex and the layout of the fields. And when we first looked at it, I'm just giving y'all this as an example, the council was not in favor of it exiting on Manley Road when we had a county highway there to exit on. And so we actually changed the location of the parking lot. It was fairly substantial, and we felt like if we had been if we'd been a part of that discussion earlier on, we wouldn't have spent a lot of money on planning for something that we wouldn't ultimately agree with. So if we could probably just, have a man in a loop on this too, Robert, as they're doing this, just to, I'd ask you to do that.
All right.
Because you know what other thoughts are out there if this is approved. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Committee updates? Jimmy?
I've got some. I think that I've heard from some of my committee members they feel like these are missed a lot during the work session, so I might go ahead and cover them, but I'm going to repeat the exact same thing in the council meeting for those that don't tune in until that time, just so that they're getting proper coverage, I guess. But Fairhope Environmental Advisory Board met this past Friday afternoon, and the two key points that I was unable to attend the meeting, but the 2 points that they wanted me to bring up before the council were that they did have an opportunity to meet with Sean from Fairhope Docks and just to continue to press for the clean and resilient marina, and as we have anything come forward with that boatyard, they want to make sure that we continue to keep in mind that they'd like to have us as a clean and resilient marina, and want to have that part of the lease agreements as we continue to develop that area, that people will maintain their slips accordingly. And the other issue, they're planning on having a special call meeting for February 22nd. That'll be a week from Friday, and that meeting they intend to discuss the urgent need for full-time technical staff to assist Richard Peterson with the various improvements that are being made to the infrastructure. And I know Richard replied to an email, or replied to the minutes, and had a pretty lengthy email, and I hadn't had a chance to review all of that, but I'm sure Richard, and I'm sure he could weigh in more as to what all he has in mind, and I know that that's something that the Environmental Advisory Board's going to cover Friday, that they're interested in supporting that. Historic Preservation Committee has a meeting Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. in the museum, and then the library is meeting Monday, February 18th at 3 p.m. That's a new time for the library board. They've been meeting at 5, and that time is being switched to 3 p.m., and I believe that is going to be the new meeting from here on out, time frame. So that's it for now.
Robert?
Yeah, we'll ask Ken Cole, the chairman of the Education Advisory Committee, to come up and give the update. I know you're aware, Jack and Jimmy, I know you saw it on Facebook that the EAC recommended that the council pass a resolution to move forward with the special tax district. Paperwork's still being drawn up by the county at this point, so we don't have a time when that will be presented for a vote by us to put it to the citizens to vote. But Ken, if you would, go ahead and.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Thank you, Robert, and hello, good afternoon, good to see you.
I wish this
Mayor.
was on the agenda.
Yeah, hopefully it will be one day
Because,
soon.
I mean, it wasn't on the agenda, and I did speak to, some of the things I'm working on that I think we should bring to the forefront as well.
Yeah, well, this is the first step. We're here, and we finally got the recommendation that you asked us to present to you. This follows on to the Acrobos study in 2015. The city administration at the time contracted with a consulting group called Acrobos, as at least a couple of you on the committee will remember. What we were looking for from that audit, that academic audit of our 5 Fairhope schools, was what do we have to do to move our school system into the top 10 statewide. And the results of that Acrobos study are there on the front page of your handout. And basically what it says is our lowest proficiency scores for reading and math. Highly competent teachers are essential to the goal of advancing student academic achievement. They recommended we increase spending on classroom instruction and instructional support. That's key. They say one way you can do that is to create a special tax district that follows the borders of the Fairhope schools feeder pattern. So what this would do essentially is create a new tax base for the people living within the Fairhope schools feeder pattern. A 3 mil increase that we are recommending would generate approximately $1.88 million per year that would flow to our 5 schools. As you're all well aware, the city has been contributing $350,000 per year to our school system, so equally allocated, that's $70,000 a year. The tax receipts from a special tax district would put $365,000 per school, not total, but per school, into the hands of our principals and teachers so they can direct those resources where they're needed most. And right now, that's in reading and math. If you look at the results on the second page of the impact of just the city contributions in the last couple of years, they're impressive. We're actually moving the needle. The teachers and principals are actually moving the needle in test scores, specifically because of the money that the city has invested in these schools. They're hiring reading coaches, they're hiring math intervention coaches, they're tackling those 2 weakest study areas like a laser, and by focusing those resources into those 2 weak areas, they've improved all across the board. Read the, it won't take you 2 minutes to read the handout that I gave you, but it pretty well sums up what we believe is a strong case for giving the voters a chance in a special referendum to decide what types of schools they want for Fairhope. And I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Questions, Council? How much work is needed to put a referendum together?
Well, what we're doing right now is waiting for the county to come back. They are putting their legal department on this so the city doesn't have to. They're almost about 90% through with the documents they need. It's not going to be an easy task, and it's not going to be a popular vote, I think, in a lot of quarters. But I'm always reminded when I get on this subject of a Winston Churchill quote. And he said that politicians are concerned about the next election. Statesmen are concerned about the next generation. I don't mean to exaggerate the importance of this decision for not only this council but for this city. But a successful referendum would probably have the most profound and lasting impact of anything that this elected body could do for generations of Fairhope kids to come. The principals have struggled, even with the $350,000 that the city provides. The weak point of that is something called soft money. And that simply means that the city's contribution cannot be used to hire tenured teachers. Well, that's a problem if you want the best and the brightest standing in front of your class teaching our students. This money, because it would be taxed annually, provides permanence and definition that would enable the state to say, yes, this is a permanent source of funding, and yes, you can hire tenured teachers with this. And it's important to note that the funding that the schools receive now, federal, state, local, none of that changes. We still, for our 5 schools, get the same amount of money from the state, from the federal government, and from local sources. The only thing that would change is an additional $1.8 million would go to our 5 schools, and all of that money stays in Fairhope for Fairhope kids.
Council, I mean, you know, EAC's been talking about this for a long time. I just need to know, is there any reason that any of you, or you don't have to give me the reason, are any of you opposed to even holding a referendum or giving people a choice? I'll go first. I'm in favor of giving people a choice to decide for themselves. Anybody that's not in favor of that? Jimmy?
No, I'm in favor of giving
I mean,
the
just
citizens a vote.
before we go so far, that needs to be said.
Yeah. I think the documents that we're going to be getting from the school board are going to require more. I'm pretty sure, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, they stipulate that it's not just your support of giving the voters a chance to vote on it. You have to, as a council, as a city, actually support the 3 meal tax increase.
Why is that? I don't know that I buy that.
I don't know that
I don't
either.
buy that. I don't buy that at all. I hope you're watching. I don't buy that.
I
You
don't,
have to tell
I don't
people
know if
how
that's
to
true or
vote.
not. I know they're requiring us to sign it.
Yeah.
We do not have to tell people how to vote.
To
No,
give
no, they're not
citizens-
telling you,
Right.
not telling not telling people how to vote.
We say, I'll say this to the Baldwin Board of Education, we give our citizens the right to decide.
Right. Well, we'll know more when we get the documents.
And I just mentioned timing-wise that I still want to look into the information that I just found out about, just so all of this is being considered when we think about all the things we want to do for the school. And that's why I went to the last meeting this past week. So,
Whatever comes, we have to think of permanence and definition. We have to be able to hire tenured teachers, and the source of the funds is the determining factor in that. It has to be permanent.
Right. That makes sense.
And property taxes are more stable than sales taxes as far as
Absolutely.
your sourcing.
Absolutely. So, we're just taking the Acrobos options that they provided, and after a year of due diligence, our committee has determined that of those 5 options, the special tax district gives the principals what they're looking for, what they need to increase spending on instruction and instructional support, professional development, substitute teachers to stand there in front of the class when the teachers are in professional development courses off-site. All of these things go into standing in front of a classroom with our kids and giving the very best opportunity for education that we can. We can't hire all the people that we want because we're bound by the equity funding formula that the state mandates. And we're a wealthy community, and we get less than less wealthy communities from the state. So our kids are working at a disadvantage.
And the principals are getting frustrated because they know the standards in which are required of them, and they're about maxed out with what they can do with what they have. Ask them.
They need more.
no, there's no question that we want to find more money. I just feel like I'm finding those funding sources that would be more proportionately fair for the people who are involved in the schools. And it's just things that we should all think about, because we want whatever citizens decide to do, they just want to get a full picture. So it's a successful vote. That's just my
No
2 cents.
disagreement here.
I appreciate the data that you've given us. Finally, we've seen some results that, seeing some fruits of our, I wouldn't say of our labors, because we're not doing the labor.
Yeah,
but
well,
of-
you've
of-
always-
Of our gifts.
You've always asked for accountability, which you should, and now we have the data to give evidence that what we are doing is working.
Ken, I know that the Board of Education is, Robert and I had this discussion on the radio this morning. I know that there's been discussions about feeder patterns changing in the county, especially in the Eastern Shore. And we don't want that to stall the election.
It shouldn't.
You'd wait forever to see results. But what happens if a group of people that were not in the feeder pattern all of a sudden become a part of the feeder pattern and they didn't have a say in yes or no, for the overlay district?
Yeah,
That question needs to be answered.
Yeah, I'm probably out of my element there. You need to talk with the county that.
It might be one of those things where they're grandfathered in to continue going to where they were, or, because I'm thinking, percentage-wise, how many it'll be.
But as
They
we
need to-
grow, as you get further and further from that election, and, maybe the Fairhope feeder pattern, and maybe not, because maybe they're just new schools built, but as if we reach out further and further, I don't know, and we take in these additional residences, they could say, well, there wasn't even a house there they didn't have a vote, so now there's a house and they do have a vote, so I don't know, maybe it just doesn't matter.
It'll probably be spelled out in this paperwork we'll receive from the county. That's why it's taking so long to get.
Not the first time it's been asked, probably.
Right.
No, but I think we're closer than we've ever been right now. We actually have numbers now that we can bring you and feel confident that the jobs we've asked the teachers and the principals to do, they have done. They're doing their part. They need more help. And in a wealthy community like ours, we can't rely on the state to provide that help. If we want the schools to be as good as they can be, then the extra help is going to have to come from us.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Any other reports, Robert?
That's it.
Councilman Boone?
Actually, I have no reports.
Okay. I have just to mention, we had an airport authority meeting just earlier today right here in this room. And we had two items that were especially of note today, and that was the notice of the availability for leasing land for potential private hangars on the east side. I think we finally got the language. We've been working on that for several months, and so there will be a notice of availability sent out in the near future for those that want to lease a parcel of land and build a private hangar on it. And we should have more than enough parcels of land to go around this time. The second thing that we did was we selected our engineer of record again, and that was that award went to Volker Engineering, and that was a very, very tough decision, I can tell you, from all of the airport authority members. There were 5 applicants, and they narrowed it down to 3, and it was, I think they described it, they recommended Volker basically because they were incumbent and didn't see any reason why not to keep them. Of course, the other 2 were, great companies. The other finalists were great companies as well. So Volker Engineering will continue to be the engineer of record for the airport authority for the next 5 years anyway. I think that's it. For me, we'll move on to department heads. Jill, Arlene, anything? Marina, Richard?
He's looking at the
I'm
clock.
just saying
Don't tell
no
how long
before I
this
ask.
is gonna take.
Do what?
I said, oh Lord, he's looking at the clock. Don't tell him how long this is gonna take.
Well, I saw on the agenda it starts at 5:30, the council meeting, but normally it starts at 6. So do you have until 6?
No,
Just-
no, this is department head updates.
Actually, we have-
The work session ends at 5:30.
5:30? We're getting close.
You best-
Anyway, I'll make it short. Y'all have any questions?
I mean, if you want to add on to what I brought up, and I got your email this morning,
Well, I
regarding
think
the
that
Environmental Advisory Board.
The Environmental Advisory Board had called a special meeting to talk about some of the wastewater improvements. And from what I gathered, they were wanting to try to make some kind of recommendation. And we sat in the meeting at the library, and that was 2 weeks ago, and then one just past Friday. And I shared with them what my thoughts were in terms of capital improvement. And so, as a follow-up, so they wouldn't have to have another special meeting, but I understand they're going to have one anyway, they might just take the information that I gave them relative to the different projects that we were talking about and make a recommendation or not. I mean, you can only talk about it so much, right? After a while, you got to fish or cut bait.
Do something or lay it down.
So anyway, that's not what I'm here talking about. I met with the highway department, not with the highway department, but Amons and Blackman's a contractor on widening 181. And they're going to look at replacing our 6-inch water main on 181. And they called and talked about whether or not we could plan to upgrade it. And we had talked about upgrading it back when it first started, and I don't know what happened with the plan set, but it never got incorporated into plans to upgrade it and come up with the difference in cost from the 6-inch that they would replace because that's what their obligation is, versus us being able to contribute to pay to have that 6-inch upgraded to a 12-inch water main. And we would want to do that because there's a water tank across from Walmart on Fairhope Avenue, and there's a water tank that we're about to finish painting, you know, on the other side of 13. And there's a pretty good sized transmission line, a 14-inch on Fairhope Avenue, and we'd like to get as much capacity north as we can. And the cost difference looks to me like, without knowing the exact number of fittings, which is a difference in cost too, but it looks like for the 2,700 feet of 6-inch, they're going to spend about $45,000 to $50,000. And for the 2,700 foot of 12-inch, based on the unit prices in the contract, it would be about $105,000 to $110,000, which would put us paying for the upgrade of about $60,000. And I think it's worth doing, and I think we should plan on having that 12-inch line, you know, extended down 181 again when they make their next improvement there, and or if we have, you know, an opportunity to do it prior to that too. But right now, I think that's the first phase of trying to get that 12-inch line coming down 181 like what I think it would need to be. So I didn't commit to it today, but I told them I would mention it to y'all this afternoon, and if everybody feels like that's the way we want to proceed, I would let them know, because otherwise they were going to have pipe delivered tomorrow morning. I said, don't deliver 6-inch pipe tomorrow morning. Let's wait until we get, you know, at least a consensus of how we want to proceed.
Richard, and then let's take that a step further. You're saying go from 6-inch to 12-inch?
Yes.
Are we going to need in 20 years, are we going to need a 14-inch line there?
Well, what we would probably be looking at is a production facility that would be north of 104, whether it be on 13 or 181, I don't know.
Actually, I
But
don't know if we have enough production to fill, do we have enough production to fill a 12-inch line?
yeah, well, production is a function of demand, and we'll have, demand will be growing. I think the 12-inch line gives us plenty of capacity along that corridor for the development and everything that
Our
feeds
wells
off
can
of it.
supply all that?
Well, a well will be able to supply it when it needs to be supplied, yes. I mean, you know, finding the next water production facility based on the hydraulics of what I understand are issues some at the hospital during, and we didn't have one this past summer, thank goodness, but during dry conditions, we have a big irrigation demand that runs north, and Rock Creek is a good example of where that takes place, and that booster station robs some of the pressure in town, and the hospital seems to suffer with low pressure on the 4th floor. And coincidentally enough, we were talking to Dan O'Donnell, the geologist, about production facilities, and we were talking about different, like out on near Boone Lane on 33. Mm-hmm. But we also looked at the well we were going to abandon that's behind the fire station at Ingleside. And we were looking at the drilling logs of that well, and they tapped with the screen of that well the deepest aquifer, and we wound up having to abandon that because of iron content. But there's another aquifer that's a little higher than that we also tap off the wells that are over on the Fairhope Avenue site behind the intermediate school. And we were thinking if we could put a new production facility behind the hospital, we'd eliminate all the needs of the hospital with low pressure from that production facility. We think it feeds the Nichols tank, and we think it'll feed the Fairhope Avenue tank and feed north too. So what I would like to do is look at the property. There's 2 blocks behind the fire station that I think we should try to look at in terms of purchasing for a water production facility there, and maybe offset some of the longer term needs we're going to have for transmission if we start developing that well field on Boone Lane, or if we start going north, we're still going to have some type of transmission capability to get any other production facility back into town.
Could you put a production facility at the location of the substation that we're going to relocate if we buy this land tonight? We're gonna move that substation across the street.
That's a small lot for a production facility. We can look at it,
I didn't know if it would fit, that we already have that land. It'll
Right.
be, it won't be used.
but it's a
kinda
possibility.
close to where you're talking about.
It's absolutely, and we can look at that.
I just thought. So $60,000, and how soon do you need an answer on this? Like tonight, would we need to?
I don't need an answer. I don't even know what the exact number is right now, but the ballpark number is gonna be about $60,000, and it's gonna put about a half a mile of 12-inch water main from 104 south. It won't quite get to Mosley Road. And it'll be the first step of improving that capacity of the water system in that area.
I can tell you, in the past, the city's been very reluctant in upgrading lines that were going in for some reason or other. And it always cost them more money because they eventually needed it. And to me, this is a terrific idea as far as going forward and upgrading a line while the work's being done, and you're getting basically a percentage off to have it done while they're already messing it up, so it's a one-time deal.
I think it's the right.
So I
yeah.
think, personally, I think it's it's absolutely we need to
You
upgrade.
get 4 times the volume.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly 4 times the volume.
And an offset on our cost.
And an
if we were
offset
to
on
do-
our cost to do it after
Because
the
they're-
road is finished,
Right.
yeah.
True, too.
So that,
I would be in favor of it.
I'll get exact numbers and.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
It's not even, to me, it's not even a question, but that's my opinion.
Hey, any others have any questions about that, comments? Would you support that, Jimmy?
Okay, thank
While
you.
while you're here, so we'll jump into that, because it is 5:31, we'll jump into
Did real
the
good.
agenda meeting. A question on item 23 about the SCADA system for the 12 lift stations again. I'm getting conflicting stories. When you were here last week in the council meeting, you said that we needed to upgrade the SCADA systems that were on our lift stations, correct? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I have some material that I promised everybody I'd bring to them. And Councilman Boone, I want to make sure you understand that I heard exactly what you said about the newest, greatest, shiny new thing.
Till next week.
I'm not asking that. I would never do that to you. What we have right now is we have a lack of comm between some of the lift stations, a majority of the lift stations, and what we're trying to do is eliminate that. I didn't make enough copies. I had to go to the doctor at the last minute today. But if you could pass this around, this is atypical of what we have now. The red shows no comm. That means I'm not getting any alarms. And that's
Communication.
communications. And that's part of the biggest issue we have.
Good, bad, or indifferent, you're not getting anything.
No, I'm not getting anything. Now, I'm not blaming surveillance for this at all. The good news is for free, I have an engineer coming in from Troy to help us figure out what the problem is. And then he's not coming to fix our problem. He's coming to help us evaluate it because we don't have anybody right now on staff who's capable of evaluating exactly what our issue is with it. In the meantime, I'm asking you to spend $35,800 or whatever it is, because we can use those, they're separate systems, we can use those on our lift stations that are giving us the most problems. And I'm not gonna waste your money. What I'm gonna do is if we can fix surveillance, I'm gonna move those to the water because all the water wells also need them. So we're gonna spend the money either way. But this fixes our problem right away, and we also have an agreement with the vendor for Mission to come in and fix anything that we have. And they also have dedicated cell phone lines that they don't have. I talked to Jeff today, and he said the two main problems we have, the number one thing is surveillance doesn't have a dedicated phone system, and they need fiber. And that's why it works for electric so well, because all the alarms and systems for the electric system is on fiber. But we don't have that opportunity with this. We're too strung out with the lift stations. I don't know what it would cost, but I assume the cost would be pretty astronomical. If we went from the one at Long Pines, which is on Long Pines subdivision, that fiber would have to run back into town. Would have to run to Quail Creek, and that's just one of the 60.
So let me back up here.
Sure.
Some more fundamental questions I had about this. I had a person tell me that they were told that we didn't have any SCADA systems on these lift stations at all.
I think
And
you-
said that is not the way I understand
No,
it.
and I cleared that up at the Environmental Advisory Board.
That's
I was
very
very
good.
clear about that. We have one, and this shows it right here.
Right, but
This
they're not
shows it.
communicating.
They're not
And have they
communicating.
always not been communicating, or is
They-
this more a recent development?
There've been problems, and we knew there were problems right away. Now, I didn't.
And then we're not trying to pick on or pass
I know.
blame, we're just trying to understand the
I
problem.
agree, because I'm not asking you to spend pennies here, I understand it. So I think I should have to answer for this. I don't know exactly, pretty soon into the equation, we were having problems, all right? And some of it was resolved, and some of it we thought we could resolve, and we were trying different fixes. And those fixes have not worked out. Now, what Jeff's done recently, he's put some antennas out on the pier and stuff, and that's fixed the problem. But I don't know that, and it's a directional antenna, and I don't know that it's going to fix a majority of the problems. It won't fix the ones that I need to have fixed pretty rapidly. I think we all realize that the biggest problem we have in wastewater is detention time. You know, if I get a page to the doghouse that says I have high water, and I actually have high water, I have about 45 minutes before we have an SSL. And it's imperative, if that call comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning, that I have that 45 minutes. And I don't have that now. As a matter of fact, that SSO that's directly related to the doghouse was called in by a customer that drove by. And we got our first page when we were there, and it was running over. And by that time, the whole thing is full. The whole system is full.
So when you say it's not communicating, is it not communicating where all the red is?
Right.
Those lift stations, they're not communicating anything? They're not
Right,
communicating
they're not
any
seeing it.
data
When you
at
see the
all?
red-
Are you getting,
they're not-
are you getting a ton of emails from where? it's-
Right, and that was the other thing that happened. But again, I'm not blaming surveillance. We won't know the actual cause of this until I get somebody down here who is capable of telling us exactly what the problem is. But they're not coming, I want to be
So
perfectly
is
clear
all
about
that
it. They're
red
not coming
gonna-
to fix it.
Are all the red, is all that red gonna be black if we spend this money?
No, the 12 lift stations I put it on will not be on this anymore. They'll be on a separate system. But all of these will not be fixed. What you see red now will probably still be red until I get somebody who can tell me exactly how to fix it. All I'm trying to do is stop the bleeding.
Understand.
And again, I want everybody to understand that that money won't go to waste, because I have 10 water wells that also need some type of SCADA system on them. If I get surveillance fixed, I'll be more than happy to migrate those over. There's no reason I couldn't. All right, but these have a dedicated cell phone system, and these have the least amount of detention time that I've got to get alarms now.
So
And
when
it-
I talk to a citizen, I can say, we have SCADA, it's
You
not
have-
operating properly.
You can send it to my office, I'll show it to them. And I'm showing you, this is every SCADA system we have. Everything has SCADA system that the city currently owns. Now, there's two that we don't own yet because they haven't been signed over to us, and I don't answer for those. They will when we sign them over. They certainly will when we sign them over. And the cost on these are, I wouldn't say identical, these are a little bit more on the front end, the surveillance is, but, you know, overall, they're about the same. We have to build a bracket, these are self-contained, and so I just want to make sure that you understand that I am cognizant of the fact that I'm asking you to spend $35,000 and some change.
That's not as big a deal. I was concerned when someone from the EAB told me that they heard that there was no SCADA on any lift station. I thought,
At that time, I think that.
I think that we have SCADA on every lift station.
We do, and I promise you that.
Yeah.
And I will physically show you that if I need to, but I made that clear at that meeting you were at, did I not?
I think you explained it. I think there still may have been some confusion. So SCADA is on all the lift stations.
Absolutely.
One of the questions, and where I might be even a little confused, are you receiving, on the ones that are here in red, you're not receiving the alarm, but are you receiving an email notification?
No, what happens is, and that's a good point, what happens is as these come back up, then I may get a dump, and I may not. But there's not a lot of storage right now, and that's one of the things, there's a bunch of things that he's going to show us when he gets here, hopefully, that we'll be able to fix. For instance, if Mission goes offline, which is the one I'm asking you to purchase, just for these 10, I got them in 2, there'll be a total of 12. They have memory in them. So if they go offline, if they lose power, they'll sit there and they'll collect that data. And then they'll tell us when they went high water, which helps me help resolve the issue. I don't currently have that. But as these come up and as the power surges on and off, I'm not able to control these well enough to work through them. So I may get 80 or 90 pages that I don't need. and I'm not able to prioritize that. Now, I think that he will show me a way to fix that. I don't have a SCADA person, we don't have a SCADA person who's adept at this, and I'm gonna have to learn on the fly, and I hope to learn as much as possible when he's here. Eventually, we'll have to have somebody who's adept at this if we stay with surveillance. The difference is if we're with Mission, and we're not, but if we went with Mission, I wouldn't need anybody because they work on everything. They fix it, it's at a website, and, you know, they tell us exactly what's wrong, and they tell us what's going on, and they troubleshoot it themselves. That's not gonna be the case right now with
So,
surveillance.
Jay, I've asked this question once before, a couple of years ago, when we had the spill at the Woodlands lift station.
Right.
And it lost power, so it couldn't communicate to
Right.
say that they were having a trouble signal. But do we not have a trouble signal for when, like I was saying, well, if that thing's pinging, saying all clear, well, you ought to get a signal on that system that says, we're not getting a signal
Right.
from there anymore,
Right.
so check it out.
Right. So what happened was, and that's a perfect example, what happened was we lost communication on a Friday. Everybody had already gone home, and there was no signal that said we lost communication, because these come up all the time. And so we just lost communication. We happened to come in Monday morning, we were like, oh, crud. We don't have communications, and that's one of our major lift stations. We were running right down there.
Well, what
And
caused the communication to fail happened to be a fuse that ran both the communication circuit for the SCADA and the control circuit for the lift station. So when the fuse blew and lost communication,
But I'm
It
saying,
wasn't
that in
gonna turn a-
itself, the fact that you're getting no signal,
Right.
telling you basically,
No
you know,
one.
every 20 minutes it gives you an all clear, and if you don't get that all clear, you know there's a problem.
Like I
Is there a
said,
way to program
We've
that?
addressed the
yeah,
being
we've
hooked to the
got
same
two
circuit,
separate
right?
circuits
Right,
now.
yes.
And
all
that's-
of, all
we've
of
done
those
that.
stations
We've
are corrected on that.
tried to
I mean,
raise
this-
the antenna.
But it's
to
like
improve
your kid
communication.
calling you. If they don't call you, something must be wrong. I mean, if that thing's not calling in,
I see,
saying
my mom
everything's all
always
right.
said, no news is good news.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Mine said too.
all right, so in answer to your
Don't bring
question,
law home.
I'm sorry, in answer to your question, no, I don't have a way, that's one of the questions I will be asking. when
Yeah,
it
I
gets
just
there.
like to ask
And
the
because
question.
that's, you know, if I said, what we wanted to do, and what we hope to do with this, was to set aside 12 major lift stations and be able to turn off all alarms for other stations during a major rain event, because the first 12 are the most important, and I can manage the rest manually if I need to, but the first 12, you know, and we're talking about the Woodlands, and we're talking about Twin Beach, and we're talking about Grand Hotel, and South 6th Street, North 6th Street, so on and so forth. All our ones that are the major ones handle multiple lift stations and have very little detention time. We will put those in the priority by themselves, and that's what he's going to show me. And that way I don't have to listen. If I get, you know, we get 80 pages, I have to scroll through them just to see which ones are Woodlands. I can't eliminate them and get right down to the Woodlands, or I can't eliminate it to see what my big ones are doing. And that's one of the things he will do. And then in that case, you know, if we lost a comm, at least I would hope that it would, I'm going to figure it out so with the alarm saying I lost a comm, and those 12, I know I need to go look at right away. I can't do that now. So hopefully when he gets here, we'll be able to do it. I'm not giving up on surveillance in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that we've done enough, but I need to do something now, and that's why I'm asking for the money now to try to get this, you know, and again, I can reuse these at a later date if I need to migrate those. But it's not the latest and greatest. It's been around just like it is for a while.
Well, again, I'm not looking for the latest and greatest. I'm just looking for a system that we don't come back to
I
a
agree
year
with
from now
100%.
saying that something, we didn't see this in the profiles or whatever in the work.
I won't
And
do
now all of a
that.
sudden, if we add another $35,000, we could just make it a whole lot better.
I won't do that. I promise you.
I'm looking for something, you know, whatever we pay for, let's let it work for, you know, a long time.
All right, and I appreciate that sentiment, and I promise you, I researched this over the last 2 months until I'm going blind.
Well, as wastewater systems go, the Mission system's tried and true, and there's several neighboring utilities that have that, Baldwin County Sewer being one of them. Orange Beach and Gulf Shores have those. I mean, it's pretty reliable.
Is there anything else you'd like me to answer?
No.
All right, can we talk about the UV, or do you have time? Or do you want to talk about the UV?
Let's talk about the UV.
It's one of your agenda items. There was an electrical glitch. The only thing I wanted to point out is the comm boards are out currently. The comm boards are out.
Number 22, Council.
The the COM boards are out from the electrical glitch. There was there was a big short out at the UV system. And that $15,000 will allow us to put some COM boards back in so we can start communicating. My point is this, is that may be the end money, but that may not be the end money. We won't know until the way the system works is for us to properly troubleshoot it, it has to communicate with us. It's not communicated. So once we get it communicated, there may be other problems. I just wanted you to be aware of it. So if I have to come back and ask for money, I didn't want, I want to be honest with you. I don't know.
Did you divert the flow to the other unit?
Right, and that was not a problem. Plus the fact, absolutely, and plus the fact.
So we have
once
redundant UV treatments at the sewer plant.
Right, and so what we also can do is, we manually went up there and we just turned it on. It's almost running at what you would consider 100%, but we can't turn it up and we can't turn it down. And these bulbs are UV bulbs, just like you see in the tanning bed. I know none of you go to the tanning bed, but anyway, I wondered about it. But anyway, the problem is running them at that percentage, the life of it goes way down, and so we need to be able to move them up and down in brightness. And so I'm just trying to make everybody aware that $15,000 hopefully will get us to, it should get us to where we can communicate and see if we need to troubleshoot more or if that fixes it. But I don't have any idea until we get beyond that.
And if you're in a mood to give us a blank check, we'll fill out the amount when we find out what that cost is.
And is there any questions on that? I just wanted to be
Can't do
honest
that.
about
We'll
it.
have to borrow money from the utilities.
Utilities.
And last but not least, the lessening of the contract for this thing that's gone on for like 10 years. It's not 10 years, it feels like it in my lifetime, about the clamp. I wanted to talk about that real briefly. We went back and forth if we even needed it on the agenda because we looked at it and I personally went on some websites because I didn't want to bother you with it because all we're doing is decreasing the amount we're asking for. And my point to all of you is I don't know if we even needed to bother you with it because according to the state, if we had a one bidder, which we did, and we weren't we weren't affecting his profit margin because he had no profit margin on the clamp that we originally had, and we weren't changing the scope of work. We were just lessening because Richard and I looked at a bunch of different scenarios and went with this clamp, which is not 32,000, it's 3,800. I just didn't think we needed to come forward with that, but it's there now. And I just thought that I felt like we may be, wasting your time already with 28 items on there. And so I almost, thought that, I just didn't see a need to put it on there, but it's on there now.
It's entered into a contract.
Yeah, this is item 24, right?
That's the only reason it's on here. It's an amendment to the contract.
Right, but it doesn't change the scope of the
No.
contract.
No.
And it actually decreases the value of the contract,
We just didn't,
which I think is the purpose of having y'all approve these contracts, the scope and the value. And anything less than that, I think is,
Well, but if you don't amend it, they actually have authorization to spend $53,900, so this kind of limits.
well,
it
he
down to
did it.
20.
I just want to say this, he did amend it, and he sent it to the mayor to have it signed and notarized.
is a change order the same thing as an amendment? Is that,
Similar.
Yeah.
is that a local ordinance or is that a state ordinance?
What is that, Lisa?
mean, we-
I'm new to
I
the
think it's a
city
state.
administration and bureaucracy of contract administration. so-
Well, we did look at it from your standpoint, from everybody's standpoint. Again, we're not trying to circumvent anything, we just don't want to waste you guys' time. You're busy enough.
That'll take about 1 minute.
Okay.
It'll take more time than we've talked about it right now. Less time.
All right, do you have any questions on it? Because
But
it
it's
really-
held the job up for about 3 weeks now. That's the more pressing issue to me because it's just time on our plate that we don't have.
All right.
Well, when we had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and then, like I said, I would just, call me or call the council and do a straw poll and say, we're gonna vote on it after the fact. It's when we're decreasing money. That's the way to handle it.
Okay, that's great.
The proper way to handle
So-
it is to still vote on it.
So we could call you for a straw vote, and if you were going to say, then we could have gone ahead.
It's
All right,
just a non-binding, but I don't think council members are gonna change their
right.
mind on something and they're decreasing spending by $30,000.
All right, does anybody have any questions on the
About
clamp? Does anybody have any questions on the clamp that we're going to use? Any questions about the work we're doing? Okay. All right, we're going to turn it, as soon as you vote on it tonight, we're going to turn it over to Blue Salvage and get this off our air. And then, and again, if the citizens ask, we're not done pursuing the bay, but there is a leak coming out where it shouldn't come out. We're not at 7,000 feet, we're at 4,000 feet, but not all of it's going. And we'll notify ADEM immediately as soon as the repair is done. All right?
Yep.
Anything else? I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jay.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. All right. Any other department heads have anything pressing? Electrical. Chief, you have anything? Mr. Johnson, are you going to talk about accepting the public utilities if we need to in the meeting, kind of going through the agenda now?
I can, and I do want to at least quickly address item number 17.
Okay.
That would be Wayne.
That's Wayne.
It's planning.
And even I get caught surprised, so I had to make sure I understood this. I want to make sure you do as well. First of all, we're not spending $91,000 on cans and bins, but let me kind of break down what's included in this agenda item. Right now, we are predicting that we need nearly 600 new garbage carts this year. Where does that number come from? We are adding about 30 new residential customers, business customers a month. That's 360 that we're projecting for this year. And we have about a 3% replacement loss, meaning some people who move take their cart with them. So when somebody moves into the house, we have to take them or the cart gets damaged or destroyed. So that's about 585. So that's, as you saw in Dale's email in there, that's 3 orders of 200, which total about $34,518 for the garbage carts. He's also proposing 3 orders of the lids at 200 a set. We do go out and repair garbage carts when the lids get tore up. That is the one failure part on that. Those lids are $17.19 a piece when you add all the parts that go with them. So that's potentially $10,314. And then we're proposing 3 orders of bins of 600 each, so $1,800 total at $8.04 a piece at $484 shipping and handling for each order, which comes to about $14,472. So we're predicting the maximum we're going to spend is $60,756.80. So, but since the not to exceed was in the budget of 91, that's where that number comes from. And again, we don't do a next order until our inventory gets to a certain level, because you'd ask the question, why not order everything at once? We don't have enough room to store all that at once. So
I want to mention, too, that we went over in the budget that we wanted to start charging a fee for the cost of the can and then giving away the recycled bins, because we want to promote people recycling and giving them, everybody recycling and explaining what we do with these would help with the recycling. But I do think we charge a fee for the trash service. It's just the cost of the can.
and, absolutely, and this is the expense side of that.
How much is a can?
The cans are $53.53 a piece if we order a minimum order, which I think was that 200 that you saw there. And you do have that toter quote in there. So let's see, let me see what was the minimum on the toters.
We just don't charge enough in the monthly pickup.
The minimum order to get that price is $120, but we just broke it into orders of 200. So, you know, that's just the cost of doing business, and we're a growing community, and so the carts are new customers plus just loss of 3% loss is what we figured, which is about 225 annual based on 7,500 customers. So I just wanted to explain, because that's a big number right there, but I wanted you to see the parts of it and answer any questions about that.
Is there anything to suggest that giving these recycling bins helps people recycle more? I mean, I take myself, for example, I've got a couple of bins. Actually, I have one bin and I use it, and then I have a big plastic tote with rope handles because it holds a lot. And my recycling has gotten about to be about as much or more than my household garbage. So I have a big bin, and it's cheap. I mean, I don't know what.
And this is inexpensive too.
But
it's
if people went out and just got their own bin like that, I mean, is that
Absolutely.
prohibitive to recycling, or?
And our,
Because some people may not recycle because they don't think they have the right bin.
that's correct. I think what we're trying to do with this, since we haven't done it in a long time, is as we add new customers, the outreach that we're going is, here's your garbage cart, and here's what goes in it, and this is what day it goes out. Here's your recycle bins, and this is what goes in it, and this is what day it goes out. We failed to mention that recycling is optional. We kind of present it as that this is what you do as part of our overall program. And we think that's a real effective way of setting the stage for especially new customers to develop that habit. You know, the reality of it is that if we could move our penetration of recycling up from the 35-40% participation that we have to a 50%, that's a real savings for us, because
Our landfill.
that's reducing that $30 a ton in the landfill and all that operation related to the transfer station and such. Because our opportunity cost is that recycle truck has to load up and roll out the door. And whether there's, on one given street, there's 12 people participating or 20 people, the opportunity cost to service that additional 8 is minimal, because we're already there. So we're hoping this will be.
And it was recommended
Yes.
by the recycling committee.
That hopefully this will be a positive outreach, is that when you're presented your bins and kind of informed, this is what goes in it and this is what day it goes out, that we've established that good habit from the start of the service with that new customer. Thank you.
Thank you. Electrical, anything?
The only thing I would have is we have the pre-construction meeting for the Pier 4, so that should be starting soon.
I have an update on that in the mayor report.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll hold off on that then. All right, well, let's go ahead and adjourn, and I'll see everybody back in 5 minutes.